plus. Kasi ang estimate, mga 60 million yung PMBIC Center, may plus pa siguro, no? Ayun, ha? Sino kaya ang naka-plus? Anyway, Sinovac vaccines donated by Beijing are set to arrive on February 23, says vaccine czar Carlito Galvez Jr. This even if Sinovac still has no emergency use authority from or EUA from the Food and Drug Administration. Ay nako, what friendship with the president can do. Okay, di ba friends ng China si presidente? Ewan ko, sino pa sa inyo ang friends ng China? Palagay ko yung mga mangingisda, hindi nila friends, ano? In any case, back in December, the PSG admitted to getting vaccines during a time where no vaccines have been approved for use in the country. Pero the Presidential Security Group or PSG gets a compassionate use license for 10,000 doses of Sinopharm vaccine. Pasensya na kayo, medyo tinatamaan tayo ng hilo dito. Kumbaga, so sa madaling salita, noon tinatago pa, kinukubli pa, dinideny pa, o sinasabing need to know basis. O ngayon, ayun, gagamitin pala yung Sinopharm vaccines. Okay. And the National Bureau of Investigation or NBI is investigating 22 hog farms in Bulacan for possible manipulation of price and supply. Unless nag-eavesdrop, tinap ng NBI yung telepono nung may-ari nung lahat ng 22 farms na yan at may nahawak na ebidensya na nagkulud, okay, nagsabwatan o gumawa ng kartel, mahirap pong patunayan yung price kasi alam niyo po, ako naman nag-alaga rin ako ng baboy. Yung pagbenta ng baboy depends. It depends. It depends on the weight of the pig. It depends on the price of the pig. It depends on the availability of buyers of the pig. O yung sa stock market nga, naghihintayan kayo, kami pang magbababoy, walang karapatang maghintayan. Tapos pagbibintangan nyo, price manipulation. Pwede ba ayusin na lang natin yung agrikultura? Yan po, that's the news, most of the news. And of course, our condolences to the family of MRT3 General Manager Rodolfo Garcia po. Pumanaw po siya sa COVID-19. Nakikiramay po kami sa mga mahal na sa buhay. Alam ko po, mahirap kasi medyo marami-rami sa atin nagdadaan sa pagsubok. Hanggang ngayon, nagdadaan pa rin. Pero laban lang. Okay, today we have a special guest. Napakahirap po niyang kunin at napaka-busy niya at namimili din po itong mama na ito. Hindi naman siya choosy, no? Nag-iingat siya and he only accepts interviews when he deems it appropriate and of value. Kasi hindi naman siya nagpapastar, hindi siya naghahanap ng public office. Although I really wish to God he would run for Senate so we can increase exponentially the intelligence and knowledge of law of the Senate. In any case, let's bring in retired Supreme Court Senior Associate Justice Sir Antonio Carpio. Sir, good morning po.
Good morning, Cito. Thank you for having me in your show.
And you have to forgive me if I'm panning out here kasi I have long been a fan. Although sometimes we may not agree on certain topics, I have been not just a fan. I admire your commitment, your integrity, and your courage. It takes courage to take a stand on issues, especially under the current dispensation. So, having said that, let's move on with the interview. My friend Sarah Sullivan and fellow columnist at the Philippine Star, rattled my cage and said, Cito, Justice Carpio is going to do an online seminar. Huh? Anong online seminar on all of these problems with the West Philippine Sea, but it's going to be for high school and elementary. Sabi ko, teka, parang niloloko mo ko. Ano ba? Sabi niya, no, I will arrange the interview. Justice, ano po itong gagawin niyong online seminar?
Well, actually, I have already a 1.5 hour seminar on the West Philippine Sea, and we have brought this down to a very understandable form so that this will be available and understood by our high school students.
Okay, now you have a 1 hour and a half seminar on the West Philippine Sea. Now, you know, most kids nowadays, their mind and their concerns is only as far as their stomach and their fingertips with their tablets. I'm sorry, I'm not being judgmental, but all parents will tell you that. Now, how can we even get them to be interested, and why should they be interested about this issue of the West Philippine Sea?
Well, we have actually broken down into 5 to 10 minute segments, video segments, the lecture. So, and we have a lot of illustrations, and it's a conversation type with a millennial. So it has aired already. We are in the 4th episode already, and it's only uploaded in YouTube, and people can just watch it. And this
Okay.
is also used as a material for from grade school to high school students.
Okay, I'm not going to pretend to be intelligent or smart. I'd rather be the dumb in the classroom. Uh, what should we Filipinos understand about this situation? Kasi marami sa mga kakilala ko parang layo naman yan sa sikmura. And I have to say the same, no. Sometimes when the team talks about the West Philippine Sea, I always say malayo sa sikmura yan o sa puso. Hayaan mo na yung mga politiko magbabag dyan. Why is it important, Justice Carpio?
Well, it's important because the West Philippine Sea is a huge area where we have our exclusive economic zone, and that's where we get a lot of fish. A lot of our fishermen go there as their traditional fishing ground, and that's why the price of galunggong has gone up, because the Chinese have been getting the fish there and selling to us. But this fish is within our waters. We have exclusive right to get the fish there. Secondly, the West Philippine Sea is rich in gas. And right now, 40% of the energy requirement of Luzon comes from the Malampaya gas field in the West Philippine Sea. But the Malampaya gas field will run out of gas in maybe 3 to 4 years. And the only replacement that we can see is the Reed Bank, which is a larger area of gas reserves. And unless we can get the gas there, we will have 10 to 12 hours of brownouts in Luzon, rotating brownouts, and schools will close, factories will close, and businesses will close. That's why the Lopez's have 2 gas-fired plants in Luzon, and they're just in case we cannot get the gas in Reed Bank and we run out of gas in Malampaya, they have built LNG terminal in Batangas, so that if Malampaya runs out of gas and we cannot get the gas in Reed Bank, we will have to import LNG, liquefied natural gas, and that will bring up the cost of power, electricity in Luzon and throughout the Philippines, because we have interconnection of the power lines now
Okay.
across the country.
Yeah, well, to add insult to injury, chances are if we have to import LNG or liquefied natural gas, we will probably end up having to import it from China as well, correct?
Well, China might sell to us, and the other thing there is that China is in partnership with a local group that could put up also the LNG gas in Batangas.
Mhm.
And so they will be controlling both sides. They could control the reed bank and they could control the importation of gas. That's why I'm happy that the Lopez Group has put up their own facility. Otherwise, we will really be at the mercy of China.
Okay, now speaking of being at the mercy of China, recently China passed its Coast Guard law, which to the point allows their ships, their patrol boats, to fire at anything and at anyone they perceive to be trespassing, a threat, or poaching in their self declared territory. Now, how does this affect our patrimony and our relationship with China, etc.? Because some people are saying, wala, naninindak lang, scare tactic or bully boy tactics lang yan. We should just ignore it.
Well, this new Coast Guard law of China authorizes their Coast Guard to fire on foreign vessels, fishing vessels, or survey ships that
Mhm.
do economic activities within the waters that China claim, and that includes the West Philippine Sea. The tribunal has said that we have an exclusive right to get the fish and oil and gas in the EEZ, but
Mhm.
in the West Philippine Sea. But China has refused to accept this, and there is a possibility that China will enforce the Coast Guard law in the West Philippine Sea. And of course, that's a possibility. But China earlier has said, when President Duterte lifted the moratorium on exploration of oil and gas in the West Philippine Sea, the Chinese foreign minister said that they will not stop our survey ships because there is a consensus, referring
Mhm.
to the memorandum of understanding and terms of reference signed between China and the Philippines to cooperate in exploiting the oil and gas in the West Philippine Sea. So there are two conflicting signals from China. China
Mhm.
said there is a consensus. We will not block the Philippine survey ships in Reed Bank, but China passed this law. So we have to wait uh, for further developments if China will enforce their new law in Reed Bank or in the entire West Philippine Sea. So my advice is let's prepare. If China will enforce their new law in the West Philippine Sea, let's go to an UNCLOS tribunal. But let's wait for a specific violation by China because there are two conflicting signals right now.
Mhm.
So uh, this new law of China actually uh, is a grave threat to world peace because uh, the foundation of the United Nations is that no country can use force, can fire on ships of other countries to settle a dispute. You must go to negotiation, mediation, and arbitration in accordance with international law. And this started in 1945 with the creation of the United Nations. Before 1945, international law allowed countries to use force to expand their territory, to expand their maritime zones. That's why the world was always constantly at war. We had
Mhm.
two world wars before 1945. But since the adoption of the UN Charter, we have prevented a third world war because war now has been outlawed as a means of settling disputes between states. What China has done with this new law is to reverse that international law. China said we can use force to settle a dispute in the South China Sea. That is contrary to international law. So this is the first time that a nation has come out with a law saying we can use force to settle a dispute among states in
Mhm.
clear violation of international law. So the world uh, must be concerned, seriously concerned with this development, and because this will change international law, and this will allow, if China can do it, other states will do it, and we will be back to the old scenario before the United Nations was created, where force was a legitimate means of settling disputes between
So
states.
it's like playing lethal poker. Although I don't play card games or anything. No, it's like playing lethal poker. Nag-bluff ang China at ngayon eto na yung Amerika nagpadala ng dalawang cruise ship yata yun or carrier and sabi nila we're going to do some maneuvers and exercise here and we're calling your bluff. Go ahead and shoot and you're very correct na if someone starts it and someone calls it, next thing you know, there's a war, and it could be a low key war, but we're the nearest in the area.
That is right, Cito, because my assessment is that the two carrier task force of the United States that are now exercising in the South China Sea were sent there by the US as a response to this new law of China,
Mhm.
because this new Coast Guard law of China has to be opposed, and the U.S. Did that by sending the two carrier task force to show to China you cannot do this because these are 25% of the South China Sea are high seas, and the high seas belong to the global commons, belong to all countries.
Mhm.
Anyone can fish in the high seas of the South China Sea. Anyone can sail there, and the Americans are saying you cannot change international law, and we will be the first to oppose this new Coast Guard law. So, and I think all the other countries of the world must oppose this, because this will change really international law, and we will go back to that period where might is right, and that if might is right, is force is right, if war is a legitimate means of acquiring territory or acquiring seas, then we'll be will be we could have a third world war.
Mhm. Okay, now just to put everything in perspective, because some people seem to be confused or muddled in this situation. Because are we only trying to assert our ownership and international rights with regards to our territory, which, from what I understand and many understand, is 200 miles from shore is our exclusive economic zone? Or are we in part of that squabble, the Southeast Asian squabble that involves Malaysia, Vietnam, etc., pinag-aawayan yung South China Sea? What is the Philippines fighting for actually here?
Well, we are asserting our sovereign rights in our exclusive economic zone.
Mhm.
That's up to 200 nautical miles from our coastline. Because China's nine dash line encroaches on 80% of our exclusive economic zone. But that same nine dash line of China encroaches also on the exclusive economic zone of Vietnam, Malaysia, Brunei, and Indonesia. So five ASEAN coastal states are prejudiced by one Chinese claim. The
Mhm.
claim of China encroaches on the exclusive economic zones of five ASEAN coastal states. So that's why when we talk with China, we want to talk with China together with the other ASEAN coastal states, so that we will have a greater voice, we have a greater leverage, because China is trying to separate us. China
Mm.
says we want bilateral negotiations, one on one. But if it is one on one, we will not be as strong as if is as when we negotiate as a five state. There's also another issue, because while the U.S. and UK, France are not claiming anything, are not claiming islands or maritime zones in the South China Sea, they have a right to sail under international law, because
Mhm.
under international law, all countries can sail in the exclusive economic zone and high seas of the South China Sea. And this right to sail includes the right to conduct naval drills. But China is saying you cannot conduct naval drills in the entire South China Sea. And the US is saying uh, the Chinese Navy conducts naval drills in the exclusive economic zone and high seas of other seas, in the EEZs of Mediterranean Sea, in the
Mhm.
Baltic Sea, and even in Guam, even in Hawaii, uh, they do that. Why are you having a double standard? You can the Chinese Navy can conduct naval drills in our exclusive economic zone of Guam, of Hawaii, but you do not allow us to conduct naval drills in the exclusive economic zones uh, in the South China Sea.
Okay.
So that is the position of the US, that there is an international law. It should be applied in all seas equally.
Okay, Justice, we'll just take a 1 minute break. We'll be right back quickly here on Agenda. Please stay tuned, ladies and gentlemen. We'll be right back with uh, former Justice, Supreme Court Justice Antonio Carpio here on Agenda. Welcome back to the program Agenda. I'm Cito Beltran, your host, and our guest for today is retired Senior Associate Justice of the Supreme Court, Antonio Carpio. Sir, we're back. And pasensya ka na, sir, nabubulol ako. Kasi I don't know if I should call you. Because I know in my heart and in the hearts of many Filipinos, you should be Chief Justice. Ang hirap na sabihin, former. Kasi one never really retires from a calling, perhaps a profession, but not a calling. In any case, back to our discussion, sir. You mentioned earlier it's a 6-part lecture series for high school and elementary. You already gave us a primer on the why we should be concerned with the West Philippine Sea. What are the other parts of this lecture that you're giving?
Well, we are also inculcating in the minds and hearts of our youth that this battle to protect our exclusive economic zone against China is a long-term struggle. I call this an intergenerational struggle because China will not just give up, and China thinks in terms of centuries. And so we, the old generation, have laid the foundation to protect our exclusive economic zone. We have won the arbitral ruling that legally says we have sovereign rights to the waters and resources in the West Philippine Sea. But this is an intergenerational struggle, so we have to pass on this knowledge, this fervor, this belief to the next generation, because this will be an ongoing battle with China until China recognizes our rights. And we have now the support of the uh, naval powers of the world. They have come out openly in support of our position. The US, UK, France, Australia, Germany, Japan, India, they're telling the China to follow international law, to respect the ruling, because they they want the law of the sea to be preserved, because if the law of the sea collapses, because if the law of the sea cannot apply in the South China Sea, then it will not apply to the other seas and oceans of the world. And how do you protect your maritime zone if there is no law that protects it? The only way you can protect that is to buy warships, missiles, warplanes to protect it, and that will be very costly. Money used to fund education, social services will have to be diverted to buy warships, warplanes, and arms, and it will be very bad for the world. So we have to preserve the law of the sea in the South China Sea, because the alternative, if it collapses, would mean hardship to everybody. We will have to spend more on defense, and we really need to spend more on education, on social services. We don't have enough funds for education and social services. And if we have to divert these resources to acquiring more ships, more warships, warplanes, then it's very bad for the Filipino people. So we must preserve the law of the sea in the South China Sea.
Okay, Justice, don't you feel like you are Miguel Cervantes or Don Quixote? The man fighting a war and no one seems to be listening. How do you feel about this? Kasi, to be honest, no, totally transparent. To be honest, if you were to ask me, Cito, what would be a better strategy, I would have said, Sir, tumakbo ka na lang senador. Baka may mangyari pa sa atin, makipagbakbakan tayo dyan. Kasi all of these lectures can't seem to get traction. And I was thinking about you, sir, intently last night. And that was the picture I had, Miguel de Cervantes, or the man from La Mancha fighting this imaginary dragon. What's your sentiment on this,
Well,
Justice?
Cito, I started this advocacy uh, about 12 years ago. Uh, I gave my first speech at the Ateneo Law School in Davao, that we must bring the South China Sea dispute to an UNCLOS tribunal, and I outlined it, and I talked in many fora, in universities, colleges, and I wrote papers. I gave the outline of a strategy to the Department of Foreign Affairs, and fortunately, it was accepted by the Department of Foreign Affairs. And when China seized Scarborough Shoal, that was the time when they finally realized that we have to go to an UNCLOS tribunal. And in UNCLOS tribunal, we won. The Filipino people now understands that we have exclusive rights to the West Philippine Sea, how important the West Philippine Sea is, and if you the surveys of SWS Pulse Asia show that over 80% of the Filipino people want to assert our sovereign rights in the West Philippine Sea. In the last survey that I saw, defending the West Philippine Sea is now the third most important issue after the COVID and unemployment. The third most important concern of Filipinos is the West Philippine Sea. So, and we have gotten the support of the world, the leading naval powers of the world. Before, we were alone, and now everybody now, all the naval powers, except of course China and Russia, are now supporting the arbitral ruling. And Vietnam, uh, Malaysia, and Indonesia are now citing, are now invoking the ruling. So I think we have already reached a level of support that this is now going strong, and China can no longer ignore this. Uh, the U.S. Is physically enforcing the ruling every time they sail in the South China Sea. They actually enforce the ruling because they invoke the ruling. And it's
Okay.
not the U.S. alone. You have the UK, France, Japan, Canada, Australia, and even India sending naval ships to conduct freedom of navigation operations. And all of these are anchored on the ruling.
Okay.
So
So yeah. So
I think we have moved very far already. Thank you.
okay. So as it turns out, I mean, many questions. No, you're almost prophetic. You started this 12 years ago. Back then, you were saying if we don't do something, China's going to grab our properties. And then they did grab the property. Even before they managed to do that, you said we need to prepare to go to an international court. We ended up having to go to the international court. At lumalabas ngayon, dahil na ipanalo yan, doon sa The Hague, sa Netherlands, ang nangyayari ngayon, ginagamit na batayan, mga kaibigan, ng ibang bansa katulad ng Indonesia, Malaysia, ng Vietnam, yung desisyon ng International Tribunal na pag-aari itong mga teritoryo na ito ng natuturing na bansa. So, it created a precedent, a legal precedent. So that's why China is trying to play nice with the Philippines, with the Philippine leadership. Now, my other question, Justice, is this. Yes, I am happy that Joe Biden is in power. He is an international expert in terms of foreign affairs. He has already put his foot down against Putin and Xi Jinping, hindi Ping sino ba yan, Senator Ping. Anyway, ano po, no, he basically, what happens even if all the world is willing to back us and go to war with us or at least fight for our rights, what happens if the president of this republic says, I don't want your help? Pwede ba yun?
Well, that's really unfortunate, Cito. But the most that the president can do is to freeze the ruling. He cannot waive it because we are watching, we are vigilant, and we can wait. He has less than 2 years left in his term. We hope that the next president will see the light and assert the ruling. But lately, the president has somehow changed his tune. When he appeared at the United Nations, he already asserted the ruling, at least verbally, before the United Nations. And the Secretary of Foreign Affairs is very protective of the ruling. He has always invoked the ruling, and the president has not stopped the Secretary of Foreign Affairs. So we are able to preserve our rights under the ruling, and this can only progress in our favor. Things are getting better now, unlike during the early days of the Duterte administration. With the Secretary Locsin there, I'm confident that the ruling will be preserved and he will not waive any of our rights under the ruling.
Okay, what about this we have no choice attitude, or we don't want to reopen the wound or the issue? Uh, do you agree with the diplomatic stance of the government right now? Kasi President Duterte said, anong magawa ko? Eh, higante yan. Wala naman tayong panglaban. At pagkatapos, DFA Secretary Locsin said, we don't want to be, making a lot of noise because China might say, well, let's just open the case all over again and let's retry this case. What's your position on this?
Well, Secretary Locsin said that we will not at this point go to an international tribunal to question the new Coast Guard law. That's okay with me. But Secretary Locsin said, if China applies this new law against us in the West Philippine Sea, then he will not only protest, he will do much more than protest, filing a protest. So I agree with that. Let's wait for China to apply the law to our vessels. That's fine with me. It will be better if there is an actual violation by China before we go to an international tribunal. Because China, as I said, sent conflicting signals when President Duterte lifted the moratorium to explore gas in Wheat Bank. China said, we will not object, we will not stop the exploration by the Philippines, but China has this new law. So conflicting signals, let's wait. If China actually applies the new law against us in the West Philippine Sea.
Yeah, if China makes the mistake of pulling the trigger on any of our vessels, kahit bangkang papel pa, can we actually count or call in the Marines, the US Marines? Sabi nga nung mga panahon ko, di ba? When in doubt, call the Marines. Pag pinutukan tayo, justice, would it be appropriate to just call in our cards or chips, cash in our chips with the U.S. naval forces?
Cito, under the Mutual Defense Treaty, an armed attack on a Philippine public vessel will trigger the operation of the treaty. So there must be an armed attack, and it must be on a public vessel of the Philippine government. Public vessel means a Philippine Navy ship, a Coast Guard, Philippine Coast Guard ship, or a Philippine Air Force aircraft. So that will trigger the operation of the treaty. And China knows this. That's why China is very careful not to attack a public vessel of the Philippines. We have this dilapidated ship anchored in a Ayungin Shoal, the BRP Sierra Madre. It cannot sail anymore. It's rusting. It's been beached there. But we have carried that in the roster of Philippine Navy ships. It's part of the Philippine Navy. And there are about 12 Philippine soldiers manning that ship. And since we carry it as a public vessel of the Philippines, China has not attacked it. China has just circled around it, waiting for the ship to collapse because the superstructure of the ship is rusting already. Because China knows if China attacks that Sierra Madre, then we can invoke the treaty. That's why China is very careful. It will not attack any Philippine Navy or Coast Guard vessel because China doesn't want to give the US a legal excuse to intervene in the South China Sea dispute. That's the last thing that China wants, to give the US a legal basis to intervene because they know the US Navy is more powerful than their Navy. So China has adopted this three warfares policy. They will just intimidate us with their huge ships, with their huge air and naval bases in the Spratlys. Intimidate us so that we will accept the 9-dash line as the boundary between the Philippines and China. China knows this, but China doesn't behave the same way with Vietnam. Vietnam has no mutual defense treaty with the US or with any country. So that's why the Chinese Navy is more aggressive against the Vietnamese Navy or even against the Malaysian Navy because they don't have a mutual defense treaty with the US or with any other country. So that is our ace. China is very careful not to give us an excuse to trigger the treaty or the US to come in, legal reason for the US to come in. So that is the situation in the West Philippine Sea. China is doing everything short of triggering the mutual defense treaty. They know that.
Okay, well, Justice Carpio, I'm really thankful that you gave us some of your precious time. And please, if there are other things you would like to discuss, pati yung seminars ninyo, our program is open. And of course, medyo gagawin ko lang conversational kasi malawak po yung inaabot ng programa and we want a comprehension for all. But in any case, I'm sure maraming natutunan yung listeners natin. Ako nga, kung baga, if this was your classroom, I would be the philosopher student. Taking up from what you have taught us, baka gagawa na lang ako maraming fishing vessel, gagawin ko Philippine Navy lahat ang nakapintura para hindi magulo, no? But anyway, thank you very much, sir. And may God bless you, continue to give you good health and courage and preserve you in your battle, not against any political party or politician, but for the patrimony of the Republic of the Philippines. May He reward you, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Cito. Thank you for guesting.
Okay, that's our honorable retired na, sayang retired na, damo pwede extend mo, bata pa eh. Senior Associate Justice of the Supreme Court Antonio Carpio, yun na po, no? Medyo sindakan blues ang nangyari. Kanya pala hindi sila pwedeng basta-basta pumutok. Pag pinutokan nila yung any public vessel of the Philippines, dadating na si G.I. Joe at saka yung mga Avengers. Okay, we'll go for a quick break. We'll be right back here on Agenda. Okay, welcome back to the program Agenda. I'm still your host, Cito Beltran. And yesterday, if you were watching Agenda, you may have caught our interview with the director, with the managing manager yata siya or director or whatever ng Philippine Oncology Center, si Mr. Lanzona, who presented their appeal or their problem with PhilHealth not being able to pay them on time. But sabi nga nila, take a number. Kasi pati nga yung Red Cross, di ba, ng problema. Pero doon po sa Philippine Oncology Center, ang pinoproblema nila, they are giving radiation treatments to cancer patients na mahihirap po. Sorry, I have to use that word, or who do not have the capacity. Kasi alam nyo po, you don't have to be poor to be unable to pay the cost of anti-cancer treatments. Yung kapatid ko po sa Marisa who has breast cancer, umaabot ng 180 a week. 180,000 po. Okay? nagbebenta na nga ng lupa, nagtutulungan na kami, maraming mga kaibigan, Jessica Soho, thank you, Marisa Flores, thank you, Senator Franklin Drilon, thank you. Pero paano po, how about the other ordinary Filipinos? They go to the places like oncology, Philippine Oncology Center for radiation treatment na affordable, covered by PhilHealth. The problem is, PhilHealth mukhang wala nang pang-cover or hindi makakover kasi nagkakaproblema. And it was brought to the ARTA, the Anti-Red Tape Authority. So let's bring in Director General Jeremiah Belgica of ARTA regarding this case and similar cases. Director DJ, good morning, Senyor.
Good morning, Sir Cito. Magandang umaga po sa inyo lahat sa ating mga tagapakinig.
DJ Belgica, alam mo naman ayokong binibigyan kayo ng problema pero cancer itong pinag-uusapan. It's close to my heart because of a family situation. I'm sure you familiarize yourself with the problem of oncology centers or renal or dialysis centers having problems collecting from the PhilHealth because of the ongoing mga kanilang correction, internal reorganization. Ano po bang nangyayari and what steps have been taken?
Tama po yan, Sir Cito. No? In fact, hindi lang ang yung oncology center, pati po yung mga ibang mga LGUs have already been reaching out to PhilHealth dahil there was a sort of tightening of the belt ang ginagawa po nila. No, well, actually, yung kanilang mga processes alongside with, we know what happened recently with the loose na paraan na kanilang paglalabas. Pero ito po, no, we've already spoken with President Giran. And he has already given his commitment na makikipagtulungan po dito dahil ito po ay nagbigay na serbisyo at ito naman po ay nararapat na naibigay sa mga tao. So, we've already directly been communicating po sa kanila and they're processing everything. Ang amin pong hinihiling rin, Sir Cito, is yung iba pa hong mga pending na mga applications dahil ang sabi ho sa batas ay hindi ho dapat tumatagal ng 3, 7 or 20 days ang mga pagpoproseso po ng mga documents basta kompleto na, sir.
Okay, is there a system or kumbaga wala ba tayong parang hierarchy of priority? Kasi kung malaking private hospital, malalim naman ang bulsa niyan, 'di ba? Yung malaking mga public hospital, malalim din ang bulsa niyan lalo na pag yung mga bulsa ng senador, congressman ay nagsama-sama na diyan. Pero itong mga maliliit na mga mom and pop shop in comparison maiksi ang PC. Are you in the ARTA allowed or can you make that suggestion, Director General Belgica, na yung bang kung maliit unahin nyo na kasi malaking serbisyo ang binibigay, maiksi ang PC, syempre matutuluyan ka agad yan and there a lot of patients are going to lose public health services.
Tama po yun, Sir Cito. We've already given our recommendations since last year on the systems changes. During the Senate inquiry, I think Senator Angara did mention that if PhilHealth, this was prior to the time of President Giran. I think it was with President Morales. If PhilHealth is willing to get assistance from ARTA sa pagkalapong sistema. So we did submit to them already yung mga systems change at consistent dun po sa iba pong yung mga ibang paraan doon na amin pong nirekomenda at in-encourage sa mga government agencies to perform a risk-based prioritization, sir. Hindi pwede na ilalagay mo sa isang basket lahat kung ano ang unahin mo pag mag-i-inspection ka, kapag ikaw ay mag-a-analyze kung anong unahin mo. Tingnan mo kung ano po yung pinaka-risky sa kanilang lahat. Similar, sir, if you are conducting, for example, an inspection sa mga Bureau of Fire, No, wag mo
Hmm.
namang tirahin ng tirahin yung mga sari-sari store, no? Unahin mo siguro yung mga yung alam mo na mga industrial at yung
Yung
mga
mga mall.
malalaki. Yes,
Oo.
sir. So that is a technique that is should always be employed when it comes to regulatory management and risk based. In this case of PhilHealth, those service providers that are at risk of not continuing operations in a matter of weeks or even months of much delay. So yun po sir ang tinitingnan din po nila, and we do agree sir with that approach at yun po ang
Okay.
aming itinutulak.
Maraming salamat, Director General Belgica, because that hierarchy of priority will ensure na walang magsara. Medyo magtitipid pero wag magsasara. No? Any case, I haven't heard from you for a long time. What big project have you initiated or has the ARTA initiated since we last spoke? Pasensya ka na, talagang gustuhin ko ma-interviewin ka. Talagang hindi ako nagdidesisyon dahil it depends on what pops up on the horizon.
Yes, sir. Napakadami, Sir Cito. Unahin ko mabilisan po, no?
Mm.
Itong January is a business permit renewal month. Nag-conduct ko kami ng lahat ng mga NCR cities ay inikot po. Personally ko pong pinuntahan lahat. Tiningnan po namin, in fact, I issued a call to all national government, local government units na do not artificially inflate yung kanilang business tax assessments. Kasi napakahalaga po niyan sir na yung iba hong mga LGUs nag-submit ang negosyante na kanilang gross sales no or gross receipts nila for the year, ayaw tanggapin kasi hindi naniniwala kasi masyadong mababa. Ano naman gagawin mo, COVID, di ba? So
Mm.
ang isa ho yan sir sa amin pong inilabas na paalala po sa kanila itong nakaraang linggo na ang sundin ho kung ano po ang sinabi ng DOF BLGF memorandum circular, that as long na merong audited financial statement or a sworn affidavit sir
Mm.
na ito nga ang kanilang kinita lamang o kanilang naibenta, then tanggapin yun as is, parang filing ng income tax, and then if pag may duda ka, buksan mo na lang, pero wag naman yung hindi mo tatanggapin. So isa ho yan sir sa amin. Tsaka ang napakaganda rin sir is we already launched what we call the Central Business Portal last
Okay.
January 28. This already effectively streamlined ang pagsisimula po ng business with the SEC-BIR, SSS, PhilHealth, and Pag-ibig. Which means through one platform. Ito po yung Central Business Portal. Hindi mo na ho kinakailangan pumunta dito sa 5 ahensya na to when you're starting a business. So,
Ay salamat, nagkatotoo na rin.
opo.
Kasi bago ka pa naging Director General, tinatrabaho na namin yan ng mga kaibigan ko dyan sa DTI.
Tama po, sir.
Okay,
So,
so
nag-ano na po yan,
nagkatotoo
sir.
na. Okay.
Yes, sir. Nangyari na po, and by second quarter, maipasok na rin natin, sir, lahat ng mga secondary licenses, yung mga nag-i-issue ng license to operate. Pero inuna na natin, sir, ang FDA. Ikinabit na ho natin sa Central Business Portal ang FDA for license to operate. So doon na rin, sir, nakakabit na rin yan. At soon enough, yung mga LGUs po na nag-automate din ay kinakabit na rin ho natin. Hopefully within this year ay lahat ho ng mga cities na 146 cities sa buong Pilipinas ay maikabit na ho sa Central Business Portal.
Okay, well, siguro another suggestion, Director General Bellica, kasi in the last few months, may mga nakakausap ako mga tao na either senior citizen, mga foreigner, mga businessman, na may dealings with the Bureau of Immigration, with the DFA, with the LTO, at nagsasabi sila na, Sir, magagawa ba ninyo ng paraan na yung personal appearance matabi muna kasi marami tayong senior citizen ayaw na talagang lumabas eh. Nasanay na silang hindi sila pinapalabas at ayaw na lumabas kasi kung magbiyabiyahe ka nga naman ng 3 hours to go to register because it's required by law, it's a personal appearance, you run the risk of getting COVID. So parang it is counterintuitive or an oxymoron to require citizens for personal appearance because that's what the law says, and yet not allow them when it becomes personal convenience, di ba? So siguro pag-aralan nyo na lang yun, Director General.
Sir, tama po yun. Actually, ang naglabas po kami ng memorandum circular on the reissuance of permits and licenses in the new normal. Nakasaad po doon yung ilang mga techniques na para maka-adjust sa mga proseso ng gobyerno. Isa po dyan, sir, yung paggamit ng mga online interviews and online inspections. Yun din, sir, ang ginagawa namin actually sa ARTA, na kapag kami nag-i-inspection, sir, nagsusurprise inspection kami, whether anti-fixer ba yan or yung mahabang pila, pinupuntahan namin on the ground. Lahat po kami ng mga opisyal, karamihan po sa amin ay nandoon sa online, no? At yung isa lamang ang pumapasok doon, sir, sa opisina or dalawa, pumapasok doon sa ground, and everybody, almost all of the officials, alam mo naman, sir, sa mga technology ngayon, you could accommodate as many persons, as many officials in the inspection team. In the same way, sir, interviews, no? Sino ba naman, sir, ngayon ang hindi na nagtitiwala sa mga interviews online katulad ng ginagawa natin ngayon? So, wag ho nilang gawing excuse, sir, yung tinatawag na social
Biometrics.
distancing. Yes, sir, yung mga yan. Kaya hindi ho sila makapag-schedule. Sir, actually, gusto ko rin, sir, balaan ang mga ahensya na nagko-conduct ng tinatawag na cut-off system, na ibig sabihin, first 200, first 300 lang ang tatanggapin ngayong araw na to. At kung hindi ka po kapasok dun sa unang 300, ay bumalik ka na lang bukas. Bawal na bawal po yan sa batas, sir. Kasi ang nangyayari po dyan, nag-uunahan ng mga tao na pumasok dun sa 300. So ang resulta nun, sir, alas 4, alas 3, alas 2 na umaga pumipila na. Sir, dyan ho tayo gigil na gigil po at ang ating Pangulo kasi ang hirap po lalo na sa panahon ngayon. Kaya wag niyo hong gawin yan. Meron na ho tayo mga kinasuhan, sir,
Okay.
na dyan.
Okay, thank you, DG, and we will allocate another date for you, hopefully next week, para ma-expand natin yung discussion na yan. Kasi nagngingit-ngit talaga ako dyan na yung mapipilitang umalis yung tiga Batangas ng alas 2 ng umaga para dumating doon sa ahensya ng alas 3:30, eh medyo naglolokohan na tayo din. Thank you very much, Director
Sir,
General Bellica.
Sir Cito,
Yeah.
can I make a very quick
Very
announcement lang,
quick.
sir? Kasi
Oh.
yesterday, ARTA issued an automatic renewal order of 2,250 pending applications that was submitted to FDA last year. 2,250 applications for automatic renewal sa mga drug, yung mga gamot ho. No? Ito po yung mga dati nang ginagamit, pero nag-apply lang sila ng renewal. Nag-issue ho kami na lahat ho ng mga pending pa ngayon ay automatically renewed na. So doon sa mga sa mga kumpanya na nanonood po sa inyo ngayon who would want to know kung sila po ay kailan ho actionan ho ng FDA ang kanilang application, pwede ho sila makipag-usap sa ARTA para makita po kung kasama po ang inyong mga pangalan doon sa
Okay.
inilabas po na automatic renewal na 2,000.
Okay, thank you very much, Director General Bellica. At yan po ay napakagandang announcement from the Anti-Red Tape Authority, Director General Jeremiah Bellica. I have gone overtime. I am so sorry to the succeeding program. Hindi po natin makontrol ito dahil importante po yung announcement. God bless all of you and Happy Chinese New Year.